They sent her wrapped in chains, a sacrificial lamb meant to satisfy a monster's hunger. The Northern Pack thought sending a broken Omega to the Alpha King would buy them peace, or at least buy them time. They expected him to tear her throat out in the throne room. They expected blood. They expected a public execution. But when the Alpha King looked into the eyes of the girl destined to die, he didn't see a victim. He saw his queen, and instead of ending her life, he ended the peace treaty and burned the world down to keep her safe. This is the story of the Alpha King's war. The throne room of the Iron Citadel smelled of pine, cold stone, and old blood. Outside, the blizzard of the century hammered against the stained glass windows, but inside, the air was still and suffocating. Daemon Blackwood, the Alpha King of the Western Territories, sat on a throne carved from the black bones of the great ancients. He was a man composed of sharp angles and terrifying silence. At 6'5", with shoulders broad enough to block out the sun and eyes the color of frozen sterling, Daemon was not a man who negotiated. He conquered. "They are late," Daemon rumbled. His voice didn't echo. It absorbed the sound in the room. Standing to his right was Silas, his beta, a man with a scar running from his temple to his jaw. "The Crimson Shadow Pack has never been known for punctuality, Alpha. Alpha Kyle plays games." "Kyle plays games because he still breathes," Daemon said, his fingers drumming rhythmically on the armrest. "If he wastes my time today, he stops breathing." The heavy oak doors groaned open. A gust of freezing wind swept into the hall, extinguishing the torches nearest the entrance before the guards slammed the doors shut again. 3 men entered. They wore the dark red cloaks of the Crimson Shadow Pack. They looked arrogant, but their heartbeats betrayed them. They were terrified. In the center, dragging behind them on a heavy rusted iron chain, was a figure. It was a woman, or what was left of one. She was small, dressed in nothing but a torn, dirty grey shift that offered no protection against the winter cold. She was barefoot, her feet blue and bleeding on the stone floor. Her head hung low, hair matted with mud and dried blood hiding her face. A heavy iron collar was clamped around her neck, the metal eating into her skin. Daemon didn't move, but his wolf, Ares, stirred violently in his mind. Something is wrong. The air tastes sweet. The lead envoy, a greasy man named Marcus, stepped forward and bowed, though his eyes remained shifty. "King Daemon, on behalf of Alpha Kyle, we bring you the tribute you requested, a token of submission to ensure our borders remain respected." Daemon stood up. The movement was fluid, predatory. The envoys flinched. "I requested territory rights and 10% of your silver mines," Daemon said, his voice dropping an octave. "I did not request a starving girl." Marcus licked his lips nervously. "Ah, but this is no ordinary girl. This is Ellie. She is a runt, an Omega, useless to our pack, a drain on resources." But he smirked, a vile expression that made Silas growl. "We hear the Alpha King has not taken a mate in a decade. We thought perhaps you needed something to break. Something disposable." The cruelty in the room spiked. The implication was clear. Use her, kill her, we don't care. Ellie didn't look up. She just shivered, the chains rattling like death chimes. Daemon walked down the steps of the dais. Each footfall was heavy, vibrating through the floor. He stopped inches from Marcus, towering over him. Then he looked at the girl. "Look at me," Daemon commanded. She didn't move. She was trembling so hard it looked like she was vibrating. Marcus yanked the chain violently. "The king spoke to you, bitch!" Ellie gasped as the collar jerked her neck, falling to her knees with a cry of pain. Snap! The sound of Damon's hand closing around Marcus's throat was louder than the storm outside. "You do not touch what is in my hall," Damon whispered, lifting the grown man into the air with one hand. "And you certainly do not touch what I am currently smelling." Damon threw Marcus across the room. The man hit a stone pillar with a sickening crunch and slid down, unconscious or dead. The other two envoys drew their blades, their eyes wide with panic. "Drop them!" Silas barked, his own sword drawn, the royal guards stepping out of the shadows. But Damon ignored the guards. He ignored the envoys. He dropped to one knee in front of the shivering girl. The scent hit him full force now. Underneath the smell of dirt, fear, and old blood, there was something intoxicating. Vanilla, rainwater, and something rarer. White lotus. "Lift your head," Damon said. His voice was no longer the thunder that commanded armies. It was soft, almost pained. Slowly, painfully, Ellie lifted her head. Her face was bruised, a cut running through her lip. But her eyes were heterochromatic. One was a deep forest green. The other was a shattered, brilliant violet. Violet eyes, the mark of the seers, a bloodline thought extinct for 200 years. "What is your name?" Damon asked. "Ellie," she whispered, her voice cracked from disuse. "Ellie." Damon tested the name on his tongue. He reached out, his large hand hovering near her face. She flinched, shutting her eyes tight, expecting a blow. When his thumb gently brushed away a tear streak on her cheek, her eyes flew open in shock. "Silas," Damon said, never looking away from Ellie's violet eye. "Yes, Alpha." "Kill the other two envoys. Send Marcus's head back to Alpha Kale in a box." "What message shall I include?" Silas asked, his sword already moving. Damon stood up, scooping Ellie into his arms as if she weighed nothing. She gasped, stiffening against his chest, the chains dangling from her neck. He effortlessly ripped the chain from the envoy's grasp. "Tell Kale," Damon snarled, his eyes flashing gold as his wolf surfaced, "that he sent me a victim, but he delivered my queen. Tell him that for every bruise on her body, I will burn one of his cities." Damon turned and carried the girl toward his private chambers, leaving the sounds of slaughter behind him in the throne room. The master suite of the Iron Citadel was larger than most houses. A roaring fire consumed the hearth, casting long, dancing shadows against walls adorned with tapestries of ancient wars. Damon placed Ellie gently on the massive, fur-covered bed. She immediately scrambled backward, pressing herself against the headboard, pulling her knees to her chest. Her eyes darted around the room, looking for exits, looking for weapons. "I am not going to hurt you," Damon said, keeping his distance. He stood near the fireplace, trying to let his pheromones, usually aggressive and dominant, calm down to a soothing rumble. "That's what Alpha Kyle said before he put the collar on me," Ellie said. Her voice was stronger now, fueled by adrenaline. Damon's jaw tightened. "I am not Kyle." "You're the Alpha King," she countered, her teeth chattering. "The Wolf of Winter. The stories say you eat the hearts of your enemies." Damon let out a dry, humorless chuckle. "Only on Tuesdays. Today is Friday." He walked over to a side table and poured a glass of water. He held it out to her. She stared at it, then at him. Thirst won the war against fear. She took the glass with trembling hands and drank it so fast she choked. "Slowly," he murmured. "There is plenty." "Why?" she asked, wiping her mouth with the back of her bruised hand. "Why did you kill them?" "I was the sacrifice. I was supposed to be executed, to seal the border treaty." "Is that what they told you?" "They told me I was a curse, that my eyes brought bad luck, that sending me to you was the only way to save the pack from your wrath." Damon looked at the iron collar still clamped around her neck. It had no keyhole. It was welded shut. A slave collar of the lowest order. Rage, hot and molten, pooled in his stomach. "Silas!" Damon roared. The door opened instantly. Silas entered, wiping a speck of blood from his cheek. "Alpha, the deed is done. The bodies are being removed. Bring me the bolt cutters, and fetch Dr. Aris immediately." "For the girl." Silas looked at the bed, his expression unreadable. "For Ellie," Damon corrected sharply. "Go." Silas bowed and vanished. Damon turned back to Ellie. "I need to remove that metal from your neck. It will be loud, and it will be close to your skin. Can you trust me for 10 seconds? Ellie looked at the monster standing before her. He was huge, terrifying, and radiated power that made the air vibrate. But he hadn't hit her. He had given her water. "If you wanted to kill me, you would have done it in the hall," she reasoned quietly. She tilted her chin up, exposing the raw, red skin beneath the iron. "Do it." Damon admired her bravery. A wolf treated like a slave for years should be broken, submissive. She was terrified, yes, but she was still fighting. When Silas returned with the heavy industrial cutters, Damon took them. He sat on the edge of the bed. "Hold very still." He slid the jaws of the cutter between the metal and her bruised throat. His knuckles brushed her pulse point. Her heart was hammering like a trapped bird. He applied pressure. The muscles in his arms bulged, the veins standing out as he forced the thick iron to yield. Crack! The collar split. Damon pulled it apart and threw the heavy metal across the room. It clattered into the corner. Ellie gasped, her hands flying to her neck, feeling the bare skin for the first time in years. She took a deep breath. A real breath, unencumbered by the weight. Dr. Aris, the pack healer, bustled in moments later. She was an older woman with kind eyes and hands that smelled of antiseptic and sage. "Out, Damon," Aris ordered. She was the only person in the kingdom who could order the king around. "I need to examine her. She's malnourished, likely dehydrated, and I see signs of silver burns." "I'm staying," Damon growled. "You're growling and you're frightening her," Oris shot back. "Wait on the balcony." Damon hesitated, looking at Ellie. Ellie gave a microscopic nod. "It's okay." Damon retreated to the balcony, stepping out into the snowstorm. He gripped the stone railing until it cracked under his fingers. Kyle, Alpha Kyle of the Crimson Shadow Pack, had made a fatal miscalculation. He thought he was disposing of trash. Damon closed his eyes and inhaled the cold air. The scent of Ellie still clung to his clothes. The violet eye, the seer's blood. It was a legend told to pups. The seers were wolves who could see threads of the future. Wolves whose blood could heal the madness that eventually consumed all alphas. Damon had felt that madness scratching at the back of his mind for years. The alpha's curse. The rage that eventually turned kings into tyrants. But near her, the rage was quiet. The balcony door opened. Dr. Aris stepped out, looking grave. "How is she?" "She has been starved, whipped. There are old fractures in her ribs that healed wrong. And Damon," Aris lowered her voice, "they kept her on wolfsbane suppressants. That's why she seemed so weak. They were trying to kill her wolf. Will she recover? Her body? Yes. Her wolf? I don't know. But there is something else." "What?" "I found a brand on her shoulder. It's fresh." Damon pushed past Aris and stormed back into the room. Ellie was sitting up, wrapped in a soft silk robe Aris had found. She looked cleaner, but smaller than ever. Damon approached her, but gently this time. "Show me." Ellie hesitated, then let the robe slip off her left shoulder. There, branded into her skin, angry and red, was not the mark of the Crimson Shadow Pack. It was a symbol Damon recognized from the history books, a circle with a jagged line through it, the mark of the rogue army. Kyle didn't just send you to die, Damon realized, his voice cold as the grave. He sold you first, and then he stole you back to give to me. Ellie looked up, tears finally spilling over. I don't know what it means. I just know that before they brought me here, a man in a black mask came to the dungeons. He branded me and told Kale, the vessel is ready. Send her to the king. When the time is right, she will be the key to the Citadel's destruction. The silence in the room was deafening. I'm a trap, Ellie whispered. I'm a Trojan horse. You should kill me, King Damon. If you don't, they will come for me, and they will destroy your home to get to me. Damon reached out and covered the brand with his hand. His heat seeped into her skin. Let them come, Damon said, a dark, possessive smile curving his lips. I haven't had a good war in years. But as he looked at her, he realized the twist was deeper than she knew. The rogue army wanted her for something specific. The seer blood. If they activated whatever was dormant in her, she wouldn't just destroy the Citadel. She could destroy the world. Silas, Damon shouted toward the door. Mobilize the Legion, fortify the borders, and get me the Council. The Council will demand you hand her over if she's a threat, Silas warned from the doorway. Then I will kill the Council too. Damon looked down at Ellie. You are no longer a prisoner, Ellie, and you are no longer a sacrifice. Then what am I? She asked. You are the war I am going to win. The High Council of the Western Territories did not meet often. When they did, it usually meant a pack had been wiped out, or a famine was on the horizon. Tonight, they met for a girl in a silk robe. Damon walked into the circular stone chamber, the heavy thud of his boots echoing against the high vaulted ceiling. Beside him, Ellie walked. She was no longer barefoot. She wore soft leather boots and a dress of deep midnight blue that Silas had procured. She looked less like a slave and more like a noblewoman who had survived a shipwreck, pale, fragile, but holding herself with a newfound, terrified dignity. 12 elders sat around the obsidian table. At the head sat Lord Sterling, the oldest wolf in the territory. His hair was white as bone, and his eyes were milky with cataracts, though his sense of smell was sharper than any tracker's. You bring a stray into the war room, Damon, Sterling rasped, not bothering to stand. And not just a stray, a weapon aimed at our throats. She has a name, Sterling, Damon said, pulling out a chair for Ellie. She hesitated, looking at the faces of the men and women who viewed her with open hostility. Damon's hand touched the small of her back, a protective, possessive gesture that made 3 of the elders stiffen. Sit. Ellie sat. She felt the heat of Damon's body standing behind her chair like a fortress. We have heard the reports, Elder Martha said. She was a stern woman with hair pulled back in a tight bun. Alpha Kale sent her. She bears the mark of the rogue army. Damon, you know the law. Any wolf marked by the rogues is considered compromised. They are to be euthanized before the rot spreads. Euthanized, Ellie whispered, the word tasting like ash. She is not a dog to be put down. Damon's voice was low, a growl vibrating in his chest. She is a seer. A ripple of shock went through the room. Whispers broke out. Impossible! Sterling slammed his hand on the table. The seers died out in the Great Purge. If she is a seer, she is an abomination of nature. And if Kyle has sent her, it is because he knows we will hesitate to kill a myth. It is a psychological play. It is a trap, another elder, a man named Jonas, added. That brand on her shoulder? It isn't just ink. It's a summoning anchor, We had our mystics look at the sketches Dr. Aris made. If the rogue army has a sorcerer, which rumors suggest they do, they can use her body as a doorway. They can bypass our walls, our guards, our wards, and teleport straight to her location. Ellie's blood ran cold. A doorway. That's what the masked man had meant. The vessel is ready. I am a danger to you, Ellie said, standing up. Her chair scraped loudly against the stone. They are right, Alpha. You should... Damon's hand clamped onto her shoulder, forcing her gently back down. I do not fear sorcery, and I do not fear Kale. If they use her as a doorway, let them come. I will stack their bodies in the courtyard. You are blinding yourself, Sterling shouted, standing up. You are willing to risk the lives of 10,000 wolves in this citadel for one girl? A girl you met 3 hours ago? This is madness, Damon. This is the Alpha curse taking hold. The room went deadly silent. To accuse the king of the curse, the madness that eventually claimed all powerful Alphas, was treason. Damon walked slowly toward Sterling. The shadows in the room seemed to stretch toward him. Say that again. I say. Sterling held his ground, though he smelled of fear. That you are thinking with your instincts, not your head. You smell a mate, and you are ready to burn the kingdom for her. Hand her over. We will execute her swiftly, burn the body to destroy the anchor, and send her ashes to Kale. It is the only way to ensure the citadel's safety. No. The word didn't come from Damon. It came from Ellie. She was gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles were white. Her head was thrown back, her eyes wide open. But she wasn't looking at the room. She was looking at something no one else could see. Her violet eye was glowing, a faint, pulsating luminescence that cast a purple hue on the obsidian table. Ellie? Damon stepped back toward her. Don't drink the wine, Ellie whispered, her voice hollow, sounding like two people speaking at once. What? Sterling scowled. The girl is delirious. Lord Sterling, Ellie turned her head robotically toward the old man. Do not drink the wine. The cask was opened by a man with a serpent tattoo on his wrist. It smells of almonds. Sterling froze. His hand was halfway to the goblet of red wine sitting in front of him. A serpent tattoo, Sterling murmured. My personal servant, Thomas. He has a tattoo on his wrist. Damon moved instantly. He snatched the goblet from Sterling's table and brought it to his nose. He sniffed. Beneath the rich oak and grape, there was the faint, sickly sweet scent of cyanide mixed with wolfsbane. Poison, Damon announced. The room erupted into chaos. Guards drew swords. The elders pushed back from the table. How did she know? Martha gasped. Thomas is in the kitchens. She has never left the king's side. Ellie blinked, and the glow faded from her eye. She slumped forward, exhausted, catching herself before she hit the table. Damon was there instantly, scooping her up. She saw it, Damon said, looking at Sterling. She just saved your life, old man. The girl you wanted to execute just saved the leader of the council. Sterling looked at the poisoned wine, then at Ellie, who was trembling in Damon's arms. The arrogance drained out of his face, replaced by a grim realization. A true seer, Sterling whispered. The rumors are true. Secure the kitchens, Damon barked at the guards. Find this Thomas. Make him talk before you kill him, and double the perimeter guards. If Kale has spies in my own castle, we are already at war. He looked at the council. Any further objections to her presence? Silence. Good. Damon turned and carried her out. As they walked back into the cold hallway, Ellie rested her head against his chest. I saw him die, she murmured sleepily. He choked. His eyes turned red. It was horrible. You changed the future, Damon said softly. You rewrote the timeline. Does that mean I'm safe? Damon tightened his hold on her. It means you are more valuable than ever, Ellie. And it means everyone in the world is going to want to steal you. The immediate danger of the council was gone, but the tension in the Iron Citadel had ratcheted up to a breaking point. The storm outside had intensified, burying the lower gates in snow, turning the fortress into an island of stone in a sea of white. Damon took Ellie to the East Wing, the royal quarters. It was the only place in the castle where the walls were reinforced with lead and silver rune work, designed to block magic. You will stay here, Damon said, setting her down in a library that overlooked the snowy cliffs. A massive fire crackled in the hearth. My guards will be outside the door. Silas will bring you food. Do not open the door for anyone else, not even if they sound like me. Ellie wrapped her arms around herself. The adrenaline of the council meeting had crashed, leaving her feeling brittle. The brand, she said softly. They said it's an anchor. Can they really come through me? Damon walked over to a liquor cabinet and poured himself a stiff amber drink. He didn't pour one for her. It is dark magic, rare, forbidden. It requires a massive amount of energy on their side. But yes, theoretically, they could use your body as a GPS signal to open a portal, but the wards on this room should scramble the signal. He walked over to her, towering over her small frame. He reached out, his fingers grazing her chin, tilting her face up. The connection between them, the mate bond, was humming like a live wire. He could feel her fear, her exhaustion, and underneath it all, a strange, magnetic pull toward him. "Why me?" Ellie asked, searching his frozen silver eyes. "Why did you spare me? You didn't know I was a seer when you killed Marcus." "No," Damon admitted. "I didn't." "Then why?" "I was dirty. Broken. An enemy offering." "Because," Damon leaned in, his voice dropping to a rough whisper, "when you looked at me, you didn't look at my crown. You looked at me. And my wolf, he recognized yours. Even buried under the trauma, your wolf is strong, Ellie. She is a survivor. Like me." He leaned closer. His lips were inches from hers. The air between them crackled with heat. Ellie's breath hitched. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like prey. She felt wanted. Suddenly, Ellie gasped, clutching her left shoulder. "Ellie!" Damon pulled back, his eyes alert. "It burns!" she cried out, falling to her knees. "The brand! It's burning!" Damon ripped the sleeve of her dress down. The skin around the brand was glowing a violent, angry crimson. The flesh was sizzling. "They are activating it!" Damon snarled. "The wards aren't holding it back." The shadows in the corners of the room began to lengthen. They detached themselves from the walls, pooling in the center of the room, swirling into a vortex of inky blackness. The temperature in the room plummeted, freezing the condensation on the windows instantly. "Damon!" Ellie screamed as an invisible force yanked her toward the center of the room. Damon lunged, grabbing her other arm. He dug his boots into the floorboards, straining against the supernatural pull. "I have you! Look at me! Focus on me!" From the swirling vortex of shadow, a hand emerged. It was gloved in black leather, wielding a curved dagger that dripped with green liquid. Then a head followed. A figure wrapped in shadow cloth, wearing a mask made of white bone. A shadow walker, an elite assassin of the rogue army. The assassin didn't speak. He lunged, not for Ellie, but for Damon. Damon shoved Ellie behind him and met the charge. He caught the assassin's wrist, twisting it with a sickening crack, but the shadow walker didn't even grunt. The figure dissolved into smoke, reappearing behind Damon, slashing the dagger across Damon's back. Damon roared, the pain searing. The blade was coated in concentrated wolfsbane. His healing factor slowed instantly. "Damon!" Ellie scrambled backward, looking for a weapon. 2 more shadow walkers pulled themselves out of the portal. The room was filling with them. The brand on Ellie's shoulder was acting like a beacon, widening the door. "Close it!" Damon shouted, transforming. His bones cracked and reshaped, fur sprouting, his muzzle elongating. In seconds, a massive black wolf with silver eyes stood in the room. Ories had taken control. The giant wolf tore into the assassins. He bit the head off the first one, throwing the body into the fireplace. He swiped the second one against the stone wall, crushing its ribcage. But the third one, the leader, ignored the wolf. He darted toward Ellie. Ellie backed into the bookshelf. She had nowhere to go. The assassin raised a sword, the metal gleaming with dark magic. "Come with us, little vessel," the assassin hissed, his voice sounding like grinding stones. "The master is waiting." Ellie looked at the sword. She looked at Damon, who was surrounded by 2 more shadows that had just emerged. He couldn't reach her in time. Panic flooded her system. But then the violet eye pulsed again. Time seemed to slow down. She saw the sword swing. She saw the arc it would take. She saw the opening. Duck. Ellie dropped to the floor a split second before the blade decapitated the row of books behind her. Kick. She lashed out, driving her heel into the assassin's knee. It wasn't a warrior's blow, but it was unexpected. The assassin stumbled. "Scream!" "Ares!" She screamed the name of Damon's wolf. The black wolf heard his mate's call. He ignored the claws raking his flanks, turned, and launched himself across the room. He collided with the assassin mid-air, his jaws clamping around the man's torso. With a savage shake of his head, Damon tore the assassin in half. Blood sprayed across the expensive rugs. The remaining shadows screeched, a sound like tearing metal, and dissolved. The portal destabilized. Damon, still in wolf form, turned to Ellie. He was bleeding from multiple wounds. The wolfsbane was making him stagger. He collapsed heavily onto the floor, his heavy breathing rattling his chest. "Damon!" Ellie crawled over to him, ignoring the carnage. She placed her hands on his thick black fur. It was matted with blood. He shifted back. The transformation was slow and painful. Damon lay on the rug, naked, shivering, his skin pale. The cut on his back was black and festering. "Too many," Damon rasped, coughing up blood. "They know exactly where we are. We can't stay in the citadel." "Where can we go?" Ellie wept, pressing her hands against his wound to staunch the bleeding. "They will find me anywhere." Damon grabbed her hand. His grip was weak, but his eyes were burning with a fierce, terrifying light. "We go to the Badlands," he whispered, "to the grave of the ancients. There is a weapon there, the only thing that can break the link." "That's suicide," Ellie said. "The Badlands are full of monsters." Damon smirked, blood staining his teeth. "I am a monster, Ellie. I'll fit right in." The door burst open. Silas and Dr. Aris rushed in, followed by a dozen guards. They stopped dead at the sight of the slaughter, the black blood of the shadow walkers, and their fallen king. "Pack your things, Silas," Damon ordered, struggling to sit up, refusing help. "We leave within the hour. The war isn't coming to us anymore." He looked at Ellie, his gaze promising retribution. "We are taking the war to them." The convoy of armored SUVs tore through the white abyss of the Badlands, their reinforced tires churning up snow that was quickly swallowed by the howling wind. Inside the lead vehicle, the heater was blasting at full capacity, but the chill still seeped through the steel plating. Damon sat in the back, his face pale and beaded with sweat. The wolfsbane from the assassin's blade was a slow, agonizing poison. It didn't just hurt the body, it severed the connection to the wolf. For an alpha, it felt like having a limb amputated. Ellie sat beside him, changing the bandages on his back. The wound was ugly, black veins spiderwebbing out from the slash mark. "Stop fussing," Damon gritted out, his voice sounding like gravel. "Save your energy." "If I stop fussing, you die," Ellie retorted, her hands steady despite the lurching of the car. "And if you die, I'm left alone in the middle of nowhere with a target on my back. So be quiet and let me work." Dr. Orris, sitting in the passenger seat up front, looked back with a grim smile. "She has you there, Alpha. I've given you the maximum dose of antitoxin, but your metabolism is fighting itself. You need rest, not a road trip into hell." "Hell is safer than my castle right now," Damon muttered, leaning his head back against the leather seat. He reached out, his hand finding Ellie's. His skin was burning hot. "Tell me what you see, Seer." Ellie closed her eyes. The violet eye behind her eyelid pulsed. She didn't see the future this time. She saw the present, projected like a map in her mind. "I see. Shadows," she whispered. "Not the assassins. Something else. They are running alongside the cars. They are on 4 legs, pale, gaunt." Silas, who was driving, tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "Wendigos, scavengers of the Badlands. They smell the Alpha's blood." "Can we outrun them?" Ellie asked, opening her eyes. "In this storm?" "No," Silas said, "but we have 50 caliber turrets mounted on the roof. Let them come." As if on cue, a screech tore through the air, louder than the wind. A creature, a nightmare of stretched, pale skin over bone, with antlers made of icicles, slammed into the side of the SUV. The heavy vehicle shuddered, skidding toward the edge of the cliff road. "Contact left," Silas shouted, wrestling the wheel. Gunfire erupted from the escort vehicles behind them. Tracers lit up the blizzard like red lightning. "Hold on!" Silas slammed on the brakes as the road ahead collapsed, blown out by an explosive trap. The SUV spun, metal screaming, and crashed into a snowbank. The impact threw Ellie forward, the seatbelt cutting into her chest. Airbags deployed with a deafening pop. Silence followed for a heartbeat, then the sounds of screaming and tearing metal outside. "Damon!" Ellie coughed, pushing the deflated airbag away. Damon was already moving. Despite the poison, the adrenaline had forced a temporary clarity. He kicked the jammed door open, the metal flying off its hinges into the snow. "Out!" Damon ordered, dragging Ellie into the biting cold. "The car is a coffin." They stumbled out into the storm. The convoy was in chaos. The Wendigos were swarming the rear vehicles, tearing through the armor like it was paper. But there was something else. Men in white camouflage gear were firing from the ridges. "It's an ambush!" Silas roared, firing his assault rifle at the ridge. "They knew our route!" "Go to the tree line," Damon commanded, grabbing a heavy silver broadsword from the trunk of the wrecked SUV. He couldn't shift. The poison prevented it, but he was still a king. He swung the sword, decapitating a Wendigo that lunged at Ellie. Black ichor sprayed the snow. "Run, Ellie!" "I'm not leaving you!" she screamed over the wind. "I said run!" A grenade landed near them. Damon threw himself over Ellie, shielding her with his massive body. The explosion threw them both backward, down the steep slope of the ravine. They tumbled through the snow, crashing through frozen branches, rolling violently until they hit the bottom of the icy gully. The world went black for a moment. When Ellie woke, the wind was blocked. They were in a small fissure in the rock face, a natural cave hidden by a snowdrift. Damon was slumped against the wall, breathing heavily. The wound on his back had reopened, bleeding fresh red blood over the black infection. "Damon," she crawled to him. "We are alive," he wheezed. "Silas, we'll circle back. He knows the protocol." "You're freezing," Ellie noted. His skin, usually furnace hot, was cooling rapidly. The poison was winning. The cold slows the heart, Damon murmured, his eyes half closed. Slows the poison. It also kills you, she said. She looked around. The cave was small. There was no wood for a fire. She made a choice. She unzipped her heavy winter parka, then his. "What are you doing?" he asked weakly. "Sharing body heat. It's basic survival." She pressed herself against his chest, wrapping the coats around both of them, creating a cocoon. Damon groaned, his head resting on her shoulder. "You should have let me die up there, Ellie. You could have escaped." "You saved me from the collar," she whispered, her hand stroking his hair, soothing the fever. "I save you from the cold." That's the deal. For hours they lay like that in the darkness, while the storm raged outside. In the quiet, the barriers fell. "Why do you really want a war?" Ellie asked softly. "You told the council you haven't had a good war in years. But I don't believe you." Damon was silent for a long time. "I don't want war," he admitted, his voice vibrating against her chest. "I want silence. For 10 years I have listened to the voices of the pack, the demands of the council, the threats of the rogues. I'm tired, Ellie. I thought if I conquered everything, the noise would stop. But it just gets louder." "You're lonely," she said. It wasn't a question. A king is always alone. Until now. He turned his head, his nose brushing her neck. He inhaled her scent, vanilla and white lotus. It seemed to give him strength. "When this is over, when I burn Kyle's kingdom to ash, stay with me." "Is that a command, Alpha?" "No." Damon kissed the pulse point of her neck, sending a shiver through her that had nothing to do with the cold. "It's a beg." Suddenly, Ellie stiffened. Her eyes shot open. The violet glow illuminated the dark cave. "What is it?" Damon tensed, gripping the hilt of his sword. "Someone is coming," Ellie whispered. "One heartbeat. Fast. Familiar." A shadow fell over the cave entrance. Snow crunched. "Alpha?" It was Silas. He looked battered, his arm in a sling, blood on his face, but alive. "Silas!" Damon let out a breath of relief. "The others?" "Aris is dead," Silas said, his voice flat. "The ambush took out the second car. I'm the only one left." Damon closed his eyes, a flicker of pain crossing his face. Aris had been like a mother to him. "We move," Damon said, his voice hardening again. "We grieve later." "Where are we?" Ellie asked. Silas pointed to a jagged peak in the distance, barely visible through the storm. "We are closer than we thought. The grave of the ancients is just beyond that ridge. But Alpha, Kyle's men are everywhere. We have to walk." Damon stood up, using the cave wall for support. He looked at Ellie, then at the peak. "Then we walk." The grave of the ancients was not a cemetery. It was a fortress built into the side of a mountain, predating the modern packs by 1,000 years. Giant statues of wolves carved from obsidian stood guard at the entrance, their stone eyes seeming to follow the trio as they limped up the stairs. The air here was different. It crackled with static. Magic was thick in the atmosphere, old and heavy. "The brand!" Ellie winced, clutching her shoulder. "It's vibrating." "Because we are close to the source," Damon said. He was leaning heavily on Silas now. "The ancients used pure energy to bind their souls. That same energy can burn the rogue magic out of you." They pushed open the massive stone doors. Inside, the great hall was lit by glowing moss and luminescent crystals. In the center of the room lay a pool of water that shimmered like liquid mercury, the origin pool. "Into the water," Damon ordered, pointing Ellie toward the pool. "It will hurt, but it will break the link." Ellie hesitated. The water looked dangerous. "Go, Ellie," Damon urged. Cale's army is likely an hour behind us. Ellie stepped toward the pool. She looked back at Damon. Will it change me? It will make you free, Damon promised. She stepped into the water. It was freezing. She gasped as the liquid mercury swirled around her legs, then her waist. As the water touched the brand on her shoulder, steam hissed up. She screamed as black ink began to bleed out of her skin into the silver water. Damon watched, ready to jump in if she went under. Click! The sound of a pistol hammer being cocked echoed in the silent hall. Damon froze. The sound came from right beside him. He turned his head slowly. Silas had stepped away. He was holding a heavy caliber handgun, and the barrel was pointed directly at Damon's chest. "Silas?" Damon asked, his voice dangerously calm. "I'm sorry, Damon," Silas said. His hand was shaking, tears streaming down his face. "I really am." Ellie froze in the water, the pain of the cleansing forgotten in the horror of the moment. "Silas, what are you doing?" "Put the gun down, Beta," Damon commanded, his alpha voice booming despite his weakness. "I can't," Silas choked out. "They have Maya." Damon's expression shattered. Maya, Silas's mate. She had disappeared 3 months ago. They thought she had been killed by a bear. "Cale has her?" Damon asked softly. "He sent me a finger," Silas wept, reaching into his pocket with his free hand and throwing a small, bloody box onto the floor. "He said if I didn't bring the seer to the origin pool and disable you, he would skin her alive." "So you led us into the ambush?" Damon asked. "No, the ambush was real. They tried to kill us all. Kyle lied to me," Silas shouted, hysteria creeping in. "But I have no choice. He is coming here, now." "You betrayed your king," Damon stepped forward, ignoring the gun. "Stay back!" Silas fired a warning shot into the stone floor. "Don't make me kill you, Damon. Just let them take the girl. She's just one girl. Maya is my mate." "She is my mate," Damon roared, the confession ripping out of him. Silence descended. Ellie stared at Damon from the pool. He had claimed her. Not politically, biologically. "Then we are both damned," Silas whispered. The great doors of the fortress slammed open. Damon spun around, but it wasn't Cale. It was a man in a wheelchair, pushed by 2 shadow walkers. He wore a velvet suit and had a face that looked like melted wax. "Alpha Cale is busy securing the perimeter," the man in the wheelchair rasped. "I am the architect. I thank you, Beta Silas, for your delivery." "Where is Maya?" Silas screamed, turning the gun toward the architect. "Maya?" The architect chuckled. "Oh, poor dog. Maya died 3 months ago. We just kept her phone." Silas let out a sound that wasn't human, a broken, animalistic wail. He turned the gun toward the architect and pulled the trigger. Bang! But the bullet stopped in midair, inches from the architect's face, held by an invisible force. "Crude!" the architect sneered. He flicked his finger. Silas flew backward, as if hit by a truck, slamming into a stone pillar. He slid down, unconscious or dead. "Now," the architect looked at Ellie in the pool. "The seer is in the conductor. Perfect." "Damon!" Ellie screamed. Damon charged. He had no weapon, only his rage. He launched himself at the shadow walkers. He tore the throat out of the first one with his teeth, human form or not. He broke the arm of the second, but the architect raised a hand. "Kneel." Gravity increased tenfold on Damon. He crashed to his knees, his bones creaking under the magical pressure. He struggled, veins bulging, his eyes glowing gold, trying to fight the sorcery with sheer will. "Impressive," the architect noted. "But you are poisoned and tired." The architect rolled his wheelchair to the edge of the pool. "You think the brand was to bring an army here?" he asked Ellie. "No, child. The brand was to sink you to this pool. The ancients didn't just use this water to clean wounds, they used it to amplify power. "What do you want?" Ellie cried, trying to scramble out, but the water had turned viscous, holding her like glue. "I don't want to open a portal to here." The architect smiled, revealing rotten teeth. "I want to open a portal from here, to the void. I am going to release the first beast, the Eater of Worlds, and your seer blood mixed with this water is the key." "Damon!" Ellie reached out. Damon was crawling, inch by inch, fighting the gravity. Blood poured from his nose. "I will kill you." "Goodbye, King," the architect said. He pulled a lever on the side of his chair. Machinery under the water ground to life. The pool began to glow blindingly bright. Ellie screamed as energy surged through her, her back arching. "No!" Damon roared, finally breaking the hold. He lunged, but he was too late. A column of pure violet light shot from Ellie, punching through the roof of the mountain, shooting into the sky. The beam was visible for miles. The sky above the Badlands cracked open, and something massive began to look through. The sound of the sky tearing apart was like a scream that vibrated in the marrow of every bone. Above the grave of the ancients, the clouds swirled into a vortex of necrotic black. A massive eye, the size of a stadium, blinked open in the tear between dimensions. The first beast had found the door. In the origin pool, Ellie was screaming. The energy coursing through her was incinerating her nerves. She was no longer a woman. She was a living wire, connecting the earth to a realm of monsters. "Beautiful," the architect whispered, watching the destruction with a fanatic's glee. "Come through. Cleanse this world." Damon was on his stomach, the gravity spell crushing him into the stone. His bones fractured under the pressure, but he refused to look away from the woman he loved, disintegrating into pure light. "I promised her," his wolf Ares howled. "I promised she wouldn't be a sacrifice." Damon closed his eyes. He stopped fighting the gravity physically and reached deep into the darkest part of his soul. He bypassed his strength and went straight to the bond, the golden thread that tied his soul to Ellie's. "Ellie," he projected, "a bullet of pure will. Let me in." In the pool, Ellie's head snapped up. "It hurts," she cried back in the silence of their minds. "Give it to me," Damon commanded. "All of it." With a psychic sob, she opened the floodgates. The agony transfer was instant. Damon roared, a sound so primal it shattered the fortress windows. His back arched as the magical fire burning Ellie flooded his veins. The gravity spell broke because the sheer magical density of his body now outweighed the architect's control. Damon stood up, smoking like a demon, his eyes glowing a blinding, furious violet. He walked straight into the boiling mercury of the pool and wrapped his arms around Ellie. "Look at the beast," Damon whispered into her ear, his voice grounding her. "You are the queen of the Iron Citadel. You brought a king to his knees. A monster in the sky is nothing. Command it." Ellie looked up. She looked past the pain and fear. She looked directly into the giant eye in the sky. "Take him!" Ellie screamed, her voice amplified by the beam of light. She pointed a trembling finger not at the sky, but at the architect. The giant eye shifted. A tentacle of shadow, thick as a redwood tree, shot down from the crack in the sky. It ignored the couple and wrapped around the screaming sorcerer. The architect was dragged into the void, his shrieks cut off as the dimensional tear slammed shut with a thunderclap that shook the world. The beam of light died. Ellie collapsed, and Damon caught her, his strength utterly spent. They fell into the shallow water, gasping. We did it," Ellie whispered. "Not yet," a cold voice echoed. Alpha Kyle stood in the doorway, flanked by 50 crimson shadow soldiers. He stepped over the debris, a cruel smile playing on his lips. You disposed of the wizard, Kyle sneered, drawing a serrated sword. Good. But now you are weak, you are poisoned, and you are unarmed. Damon tried to stand, but his legs failed him. The magic transfer had burned out his reserves. Kyle walked to the edge of the pool. I told you, Damon, I sent you a victim. Now I will kill you both and take the West. He raised the sword for the execution swing. Bang! Kale's head jerked forward. A red mist sprayed into the pool water. The Alpha stood frozen for a second before pitching forward, falling face first into the water, dead. Behind him, leaning against a broken pillar, was Silas. The Beta held the smoking gun, blood pouring from his eyes and ears. The architect's earlier attack had caused massive internal damage, but his aim had been true. Silas, Damon breathed. The Crimson Shadow soldiers, seeing their leader dead, hesitated. Attack! One yelled. No! Ellie stood up. The magic had drained Damon, but it had supercharged her. She stepped out of the pool, her violet eyes glowing with terrifying intensity. Your Alpha is dead, Ellie said, her voice echoing with the remnants of the Void's power. If you take one more step, I will not open a door to the sky. I will open a door inside your lungs. The soldiers smelled the ozone and death on her. They dropped their swords and knelt. Ellie turned to Silas, running to him as he slid down the pillar. Damon dragged himself out of the pool to his friend's side. Maya, Silas rasped, his vision fading. Do you think she's waiting? She's waiting, Damon said, his voice cracking as he gripped Silas's hand. She's by the fire, brother. Go to her. Silas let out a long breath, a smile touching his lips. And then he was gone. Damon bowed his head until it touched his best friend's chest, a single tear tracking through the soot on his face. 3 months later, the winter snows had melted. The iron citadel smelled of fresh timber and white lotus. Damon stood on the balcony, looking over a kingdom at peace. He had annexed the Crimson Shadow lands. He was no longer just a king. He was an emperor. He felt her before he heard her. Ellie stepped onto the balcony, wearing a dress of silver silk and a crown of woven white gold. The brand on her shoulder was now just a faint white scar. The council is waiting, she said softly, linking her arm with his. Let them wait, Damon said, pulling her close. They are afraid of you. They are afraid of us, she corrected. Damon looked into her mismatched eyes, one green, one violet. I told them once I wanted a war. I was wrong. I didn't want a war. I wanted a victory. He kissed her, deep and claiming, as the sun set over their dominion. And you, my queen, he whispered against her lips, are the greatest victory of my life. Come, Alpha, Ellie smiled. The story isn't over. We have a dynasty to build. They turned and walked back inside together, and the heavy doors closed on the night, sealing the legend of the Alpha King and his seer queen forever. And that is the story of how a king refused a sacrifice and found a queen. It cost him his best friend, his blood, and nearly his kingdom. But in the end, Damon Blackwood proved that true power isn't about how many wars you win. It's about who you're willing to fight them for. What did you think of Silas's redemption? Did he deserve to die, or should he have lived to see the new world? Let me know your theory in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey into the world of werewolves, alphas, and magic, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss the next part of our saga. I have a darker, even more twisted story coming next week that you won't want to miss. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.